second, right? So the reason like you feel like something is missing during the holidays is because something is missing during the holidays.
True. Yeah. This reminds me, I wanted to share with you because I thought of this. My dad wrote a book. He actually wrote several. But in the book, he had a fictional character who was based on himself, had a different profession, but the same backstory with my brother who, his kid who committed suicide. And then he wrote the actual experience of what it felt like for him when my brother committed suicide. And I wanted to read it to you.
Sure.
Maybe, yeah.
Please.
And when I was 16, I actually edited the book for my dad. So I read it all the way through back then because he didn't get an editor. I wasn't very good at editing. I can actually do it much better now. While I'm reading it, I would want to change some words around. Anyway. But yeah.
Just read it.
Sure. So let me pull it. Okay. Okay. So it goes... So some of this is fictional. I'll give a little bit of preface. No, I'll just go right into it. I tossed and turned in bed, but couldn't fall asleep, as every night since my personal tragedy happened in midsummer of that same year. My son had been suffering from a severe depression for several months, and I did sometimes fear the worst. So when my wife called me at work on that evening and said that his room was locked and he wouldn't respond to calling his name and knocking on the door, death immediately reared in my mind and my heart palpitated with a pang. I shouted, "My son is dead," and I started sobbing savagely and uncontrollably. My secretary drove me home. Someone climbed to the rear window of his room and broke it, then immediately screamed to call the paramedics. Leora, her name's really Judy. Judy ran to Guy's room, the secretary following on the steps. Judy came out of the room crying hysterically, her pain throbbing around me. The paramedics came and she re-entered the room with them, but they could only confirm Guy's death. I howled even more, but did not have the strength of mind to even think about entering Guy's room. I ran up and down, back and forth in the house. I stood up again, sat again, lay down on the floor and twisted in all forms and directions, but I could not escape the terrible situation. I screamed for my son and hoped that he would immediately come out of the room. I saw Judy breaking out from Guy's room, dashing past everyone in the corridor, ripping out her hair, and rushing to her bedroom, door slamming behind her. And I still twisted around in frenzy. This is not true. How do I get out of this nightmare? My mind raged. Where do I hide now for eternity? At nights I could not sleep, daydreaming deliriously about my son in conversation and activity with me. During the day I had to face all those annoying friends and colleagues who honestly, with good intentions, were torturing me with the meaningless words, all of them repeated endlessly, as if they had rehearsed together. You have your family to take care of, as well as your police work. Be strong. Someone's calling me. What? Sorry, 1-800 number is the worst thing. As if I needed to be told all this. Were not for these cursed obligations, I would emulate Guy's suicide and be immediately released from the pain. And anyway, how could I betray his memory by tending to things as meaningless and trivial as personal achievement, status, and career? The constant, unbearable, relentless pain weighing down on my chest like 100 tanks parked on it, and the need to perform work and other daily duties was now utterly meaningless. To watch people going places, coming back, talking and toiling for reasons that now completely escaped me. What is the meaning of all this hassle and tussle? I am dead, and these people continue their daily occupations, and I have to watch them and their utterly stupid ambitions and activities to get rich, to be powerful, to do this and that. What for? As life has already ended. And why is it that I'm dead and they're alive? And why is it they have sons to continue their existence after they're gone? And where's mine? While performing my duties as a lawyer, he wrote police inspector, but it's lawyer really, I would feel sad, enraged, empty-headed, and exalted, concurrently or alternatively. Why can't I also depart after Guy? Maybe I will find him somewhere. But when I call him back in my dreams, he only signals that it was time for him to go on with his passage and not for me. I have family, duties, and a city's population to protect here. The same population who couldn't honestly give a fuck about Guy's death. Can anyone understand the city's treatment of me? As the weeks and months passed, black horror settled in my mind. My own darkness engulfed, sucked, and suffocated me. Inescapable misery constantly bashing my heart, gashing wounds of unbearable pain. Memories of my son melted my brain like butter in boiling vapor, driving me insane. And the worst was the impossibility, the absolute impossibility to run away and to vanish and disappear. There was nowhere to hide, except if blessed sleep came to me some nights after many hours of twisting in my bed. No appetite for food, for sex, or achievement whatsoever. No ambition to make even the slightest advance. Only the burden in my chest getting heavier every day, and the nagging dread that in time I will forget Guy and desert him. And so I continued living like a zombie, grieving not only the loss of my son, but mainly the loss of my old securities, of the confident man I used to think I was, of how I imagined I could make life happen. I'll stop for a bit. I can't fucking read it.
Take your time.
Slowly I began realizing that I was separated from life because my son was my life and he would never return. I had lost my connection to the part of myself that I could not, without my son, satisfy. And I mourned that part of myself which my son had reflected. I mourned for me. This was the unfolding of the simple realization of why I felt dead among the living. I went to the kitchen, took a sleeping pill, sagged back inside my bedroom, and sank into a welcome, dreamless sleep. That's it.
Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah. Someone asked who wrote that. My dad wrote that. It's $0 on Kindle if you want it. I'll link it in the chat.
So,
person watches this video, chat 1 and has to delete all whip emotes and no longer accept whip songs.